Welcome to SeritiTALKS, a platform that brings together development practitioners, communities, academics, policymakers, funders, and other stakeholders that share knowledge, ideas, and experiences. My name is Millicent Mabuta, and today we're discussing tri-sectoral support for non-profit organizations. Joining us today is Theresa, the CEO of Afrika Tikkun Bambanani, representing the non-profit sector, and we have Kirston Greenop from Standard Bank, representing the private sector. Welcome to SeritiTALKS. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for setting this up. It's very, very proactive.
Exactly.
Okay. Before we dive into our discussion for the day, please note this session is being recorded and will be available in the Seriti website in a few days. Use the chat box to participate. Type all your questions in the Q&A and we'll answer them as we go. Stu, when you can do the next slide. This will be our key discussion points. We'll be discussing a lot of questions, but they'll all be based on the following that you're seeing on your screen right now. To kickstart our discussion, maybe let's start by defining what tri-sectoral partnership is, and Theresa will do that for us.
Thank you, Millicent. Tri-sectoral partnership is also known as cross-sector partnership, and this unites three vital sectors of society: government, business, and civil society. And the teamwork usually tackles complex issues by leveraging each other's strengths and expertise and resources. So, for example, you've got the government sector. Often this is just the local government or just the department heads in each community, but it can also involve regional and national government bodies. You then get the business or private sector, and that's where like Standard Bank would come in, or other huge companies or even small companies, and they usually bring the financial support. And this is often done through partnerships or their CSR initiatives. And then you get the civil society, which involves nonprofit, also community groups. The community groups bring the grassroots knowledge, and that is what makes them so vital, the community engagement and the social justice advocacy. The benefits here is there is now resource pooling. So you now are combining your diverse resources, which could be money, skills, infrastructure, and this all comes together to tackle this, the big challenges that we have in South Africa. We then have expertise and innovation, where each sector combines their unique expertise and innovation. Sustainability is very important here because the solutions consider social, economic, and environmental aspects for lasting impact. There is accountability, where everybody is now accountable for what they are bringing to the table. And the collaboration encourages transparency and oversight. There's now a more holistic problem solving because everybody solves a different issue that comes together, and it addresses now a multifaceted way of solving problems effectively. There is stakeholder engagement, where you engage marginalized voices for inclusive solutions, risk management, and social impact. So, Millicent, in essence, the tri-sectoral collaboration fosters cooperation among government, business, and civil society to address complex societal problems. It brings efficiency, diverse expertise, sustainability, accountability, inclusive problem solving, risk management, and social impact. And these partnerships are crucial for solving global issues, and especially the issues in South Africa.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us a practical example of what you guys are doing in Afrika Tikkun that will give us an understanding or a better picture of what a tri-sectoral support looks like and how it benefits you guys?
Okay, so the model of Afrika Tikkun is a cradle-to-career model. Afrika Tikkun Bambanani is solely for ECD. So how it benefits is us is that Afrika Tikkun first forges relationships in communities. And then Afrika Tikkun Bambanani will then go in and deliver our ECD program. So because there is that relationship building in a community, it makes it much easier for us to go in. So to first foster a relationship with the community heads. And you must remember, what we feel is right, or what we feel a community should have, is not always what they need and what they want. So you need to get buy-in first. And a very good example of this would be, for example, we partnered up in Marikana with AECI. Over there, what we did was AECI with the private sector that brought the funding to the table. They also then, people that worked in their mining, on their mines, their children then went to the ECD. And we also then partnered up with Anjani Clinic, who's a mobile clinic. So together, this whole formation brought together a really successful project where we all came together to help the ECDs of the area, where we upskilled the practitioners, where we took curriculum into the classroom, and then we involved the parents, because Anjani Clinic would then came together, you know, with us, and we had health days where the children would come in to have eye screening. The parents were then educated on how to correctly feed their children for nutrition, to check their clinic cards. So it became a partnership of not only taking curriculum into the ECD, but then involving everybody in the community. And I can't stress enough how important community buy-in is before you go in. You cannot just barge into a community and feel that what you're doing is what they need. You've got to have buy-in first.
Okay. Given the partnerships you just mentioned, what do you think were the unique strengths that every partner brought to the table that are making this whole project a success?
Okay, so first what the government brought to the table was the local knowledge. So they had an understanding of where the ECDs were placed, which ECDs were registered, which were non-registered, and what the needs were of each ECD. So that was really great to have the department heads. The private sector over here, which was AECI in this case, they then provided the funding, the community presence, because they're very, very present in the Marikana area, the financial resources, the access to the various beneficiaries in the program. And then they also fulfilled their CSR, their corporate social responsibility. In terms of the community, we then provided the training of the practitioners, the ECD, we upskilled the practitioners, we improved the ECD areas. We also had the local knowledge, the people in the community. They were very active in creating the solutions that we required. There was parental involvement. When we had our clinic days, the parents would come and they would engage a lot with us, which was very important. So in a nutshell, that was a very good example where we actually had to have all three of us together to form this successful partnership.
Great. Thank you. I think we can all agree that there is a need for tri-sectoral partnerships. Kirston, on your side, what are some of the common challenges you face when you try to form these partnerships with non-profit organizations?
So thanks, Millicent. I think I want to even take a step back from that. The way that Theresa has outlined the problem and the way that she has actually explained the problem is that the difficulties that we're facing, and especially where NGOs are operating on complex systems. They're operating in a complex, dynamic system that is ever-changing, but you have to be on the ground to know exactly what's happening. And in these complex systems, you don't get easy solutions. You don't get quick wins. You don't get these types of things. You actually have to have a complex solution. And so NGOs government and the private sector have to know going into this that it's going to be a complicated matter. It is going to require debate, and it's going to require discussion and trade-offs, and the types of things that are happening. There needs to be quick turnaround time. There has to be those kinds of things that are available. So the ethos of how you are assisting has to be correct. The ethos of how you are intervening in a way has to be done not just with good intentions, but consistently understanding the local conditions as well as the requirements on the ground. And Theresa gave a brilliant example of this, right? So she gave the example of in terms of what does each partner bring to the table? Because the other thing that you can't assume is that in a tri-sectoral relationship, that one partner knows everything. And this means you're going to have to take a step back from your ego. This means that you're going to have to take a step back from, in terms of the situation that's happening, in terms of the kind of the difficulties and the challenges that you're dealing with on a daily basis, and understand your common objective. And you need to have this constant reflection of the common objective. So if we have a look at the partners in the situation, I think that very, very simplistically, you can sort of look at it as government as a door opener, as a strategic partner to be able to say where requirements are. You can see NGOs as implementers, designers of programs who can get things done, and you see the private sector as funders. We need to be careful because those boundaries overlap. So those boundaries are not always the same in every single project. And also, we're doing a disservice to each one of our partners by thinking about them in that way. So think about, for example, and I'm just going to use the private sector because obviously that's who I'm speaking about today,
Yes.
is think about the private sector's ability not only to provide funding, but also connections to other partners, NGOs, funders, donors, etc., as well as relationships with government which may not exist. Think about exactly the same thing at an NGO level. At an NGO level, you know that you have a particular mandate to fulfill with very scarce resources, very scarce personnel, very scarce time limits. But at the same time, you are being requested to do something that is absolutely systemically impactful. So what else do you need to have in place? Does it mean that you're going to have to step out of your comfort zone and form relationships with other NGOs? What do those relationships look like? How are you going to make those connections? How are you going to leverage other donor funding and make sure that you can actually juggle your donors to be able to say that the impact that you're having is made greater by the complex situation that you're dealing with? Now, donors and funders, it's a lot easier for them to say, I'm going to give an X amount for X impact. That's easy, and we're going to speak about monitoring and evaluation later. That's easy to monitor. That's easy to evaluate. That does not create impact for the community in which you're operating in. So monitoring and evaluation often falls into the trap of we monitor against activities, we evaluate against outcomes, but in actual fact, we don't look at impact. So the kind of the mindset and the debate and the discussion that has to take place is astronomical, and you cannot underestimate the time this preparation takes and the amount of preparation that has to take place and debate that has to take place. So some of the things that I want to pick up on in terms of challenges is coming together with the same ethos and the same clear objective right from the start. Knowing what a partner's role and responsibility is, but not having solid boundaries, knowing that there can be overlap and that if there's constant communication, people can feed ideas into the process continuously. There is no one true truth. It evolves as you go along. So the whole way that we're going through an exercise of looking for impact and looking to make systemic change, we need to stop thinking about it as discrete projects, and we need to start thinking about it in terms of what is the greater systemic impact that we're trying to have, and is there anything in our requirements that is a challenge that is holding us back? Private sector is often the funding or the reporting. NGOs, it could be resources. Governments, it could be a particular term that they have to deal with. And we need to be honest and upfront about those. Problems go off and projects go off the rails continuously when these are the types of things that we don't address. Now, they sound very much like soft skills, right? They sound like, oh, everyone's going to get together and have a wonderful time and we're all going to promise to work together. It's not simple. It's not easy. We don't do it like that. We're people. We have particular viewpoints. It's going to be long and it's going to be messy. So I think we have to embrace that mess.
Okay, you've said a mouthful. So, what are the typical funding models that you guys have available, and how can nonprofits secure financial support for their initiatives?
Yeah. So there's the straightforward. So in terms of private sector, and I'll separate us out from donor agencies and foundations, because I think that there's separate requirements and there's separate kind of objectives and timelines in place. So those kinds of things that curtail an NGO being able to access those funds or working with governments to be able to do it are very important to consider. So from the private sector side, the most common are the ones that Theresa's already referred to, which is your CSI or your corporate social responsibility funding. And that is funding that needs to be spent on a particular socio-developmental need. Usually what happens is within an organization, this is then determined by quite a number of governance processes and approval processes that people have to go through. So it's time consuming. And it also requires a lot of, for the CSR teams, it requires them to do a lot of persuading. So you need to capacitate them to do that persuading on your behalf. But then there are other funding models that do exist. There are funding models that the private sector is involved in. For example, working with government on particular types of programs, for example, the YES program, that would be a particular one where we are working with government on a particular government-funded program, and then we crowd in private sector financing to be able to do it. There's also other programs where government is coming up with things such as blended finance models, where NGOs or particular communities can actually be financed or funded through a blended finance model, which means that government takes some of the risk and the private sector takes some of the risk. And then that way you can actually get greater resources into the NGO sector. Some of the other ones are, for example, social bonds or environmental bonds, so bond financing. Those types of financing programs in place. So CSI and donations, straightforward donations, that's probably the easiest and most simplistic, but this sector and this area is evolving. And I think that we need to actually stay on board and share knowledge about where these different forms of support and financing are going to come from in the future.
Okay. And do you think these partnerships are only limited to financial or monetary benefits, or are there other resources or in-kind contributions that nonprofits can seek from the private and the public sector?
In fact, you should demand it. So it's not just seek. So from the private sector, yes, there is finance. But the private sector, depending on what you consider or where you're going for this private sector money, they also have other capabilities or resources that are available, from skills, from thinking, from venues, from logistics, from placements, whatever. So to think creatively about, I do not just need an X amount of money to get my project done. What else can you bring to the table? And there's certain private sector players, and actually the majority that I've spoken to, who they may actually not have a vast sum of money that they can provide, but they do have time and they do have people and they do have resources and they've got venues. And so those are the types of things that they can do. So don't stop the conversation at a funding agreement.
Money.
Have an additional conversation about what else can you offer and what else would you require from us?
Okay. I'm dropping this question to everyone who's attending, and our speakers can also answer on it. Can anyone just give us a brief definition, explanation of what the ESG scoring is and how it works and how nonprofits can use it to give themselves an added advantage? So I'm just going to open the floor for a few minutes. If no one picks it up, then I'll bring it to my speakers. You can just raise your hand and then we can take it from there. No takers? Oh, okay. There are no takers from the floor. So any of my speakers, can you guys give us a brief definition of what the ESG scoring is and how it works and how it can help nonprofits?
Can I take that one, Melissa and Theresa, if you don't mind?
Please
No
I think
problem.
that it's actually, I think it's a tool that you can use.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that the NGO sector should see as something that's going to be an arsenal in one of their weapons that they can use. Corporates, especially large corporates, are being asked to account for their environmental, social, and governance impact. And the best way to do that is through their partnerships with NGOs. So to be able to have an ESG score, you need to have clear metrics of what you're trying to do. Now, these metrics don't have to be the vast numbers of people or things supported. They really can be impact and qualitative metrics, but you need to have clear metrics. You need to have clear reporting structures or ways to report back. And you need to be able to have a way to verify that the information was done. In this way, corporates you have them on board and you've got both ears listening, because they are looking for things where not just having, and I'm speaking as an institution that's not just in South Africa where we have legal requirements to do CSI and CSR, but organizations that go above and beyond that, and we work across Africa. There's a particular type of project that corporates want to be involved in that makes community impact. And the best way to get them both in terms of the impact that they're having, as well as the kind of the indices that they are meeting, is to go the ESG route. The ESG route basically says clear metrics on a social project, clear metrics on an environmental project, timelines, and I know I said don't look at timelines so much, but definitely timelines and a particular reporting period. And if you can agree with corporates up front in terms of how you are going to actually provide that for them, as well as, and this is maybe the addition that people haven't really got right yet, link it to the business that they do. So link it to what they are good at. So if an organization is in manufacturing, link it to things such as water, link it to things such as community development. If it's in mining, link it to environmental and social factors. If it's a financial sector, link it to things such as financial inclusion or economic development and job creation. Because in that way, the organization is able to then directly see the link between the work that NGOs do every single day, as well as the business that they run.
Okay, thank you so much, Kirston. Struan, do you have any questions in the Q&A?
Thanks, Millicent. We do have several. The first question is from Shane. They have a NPC called Buzz a Ride, and it's based in KwaZulu-Natal, and it's focused on providing transport to people living with disabilities to get to work, school, hospital, visits, etc. And they're asking for suggestions on where they may find support for their NPC. We
That's
have
quite
another
a general question.
I wonder
That's
if
very
perhaps Uber or Bolt have a corporate social responsibility. You know, perhaps you could try one of the transport companies, but I think Uber or Bolt, I would definitely try them first.
Thank
Given
you.
the type of business that they do.
Mm. Also
Then
things
we
like
have
bus companies, yeah. Sorry?
we have another question specific to Standard Bank. Just could we get some more information about the different budgets and projects as when you're looking at CSI and CSR versus BE and supplier development?
It tends to be one and the same budget for the majority of cases, unless it is what we consider a blended project. So the CSR or CSI funding and SED funding also links to our enterprise development funding and supplier development funding, and it does tend to be the same and come out of the same pool. But that is the bare minimum that we invest. So that is then that's our starting point. Over and above that, we actually go out of our way to go into the business areas and say, where are things that you can do that have social impact that also makes a good business case? So we don't think that the two are mutually exclusive. We don't think that you can, you can do good and make money at the same time. And to answer a question that comes later on in the chat there, one of the projects that we have started is the one called One Farm Share. And One Farm Share was we created a platform, which was an electronic platform that connects emerging farmers to markets and especially to NGOs, and as well as commercial farmers who want to donate surplus food and food that's going to waste. And we then connected to emerging farmers, especially women farmers, and we connected to farmers who require markets. So not only creating a market in terms of agriculture and supporting jobs in that regard, but also then being able to reach NGOs with nutritious food, with food that they need to use right now. And that was a project that was started in the business, in collaboration between the business and funded by the business, as well as the CSI funds. And so that is something that then works. We've got another one that's focused on education, for instance. So I would say the majority still is CSI funding, but I think there are a lot of organizations who are trying to find more blended approaches.
Thanks, Kirston. So we also have a good news story from a member of the audience, Tebogo, and she tells us that they have a after-school support program called Vela Works, and it's supported by Old Mutual. And she's agreeing with the theme of the discussion, saying in the beginning, Old Mutual was not sure of the context. And what happened is that they brought NGOs and local government together to support the school communities. And it's been going well for the past 3 years.
That's amazing.
Brilliant story.
Yeah, so that's it for now. I can check in a bit.
Okay.
I see Tebogo also has one on Tutua, so that's the foundation that Standard Bank has. So
Ooh.
that is separate. So that's the other good thing, and thank you, Tebogo, for reminding me. Corporates often have foundations that are separate from their CSI funds. That's an additional pool of resources that you tap into.
Okay,
Good
great.
point.
To create and to maintain those amazing partnerships, I think there's a need for some synergy at one point. Theresa, can you help us to identify how nonprofits can find the right partners for them, to know which doors to knock at when they're asking for this type of support?
Absolutely. I mean, Kirston said it perfectly. As NGOs, we actually have to let go of our ego and try partner up with other NGOs, not only with the with governments and private and corporate sectors, but also partner up with other NGOs, because we all have the same end goal. I know the pool is small and we all fighting for the same sort of funding, but for example, I'll use the example of ECD because that is what we do. But within ECD, we can partner up with so many other NGOs to actually create a holistic center of excellence. So, for example, there are feeding schemes. There are NGOs that do infrastructure. There's those that do transport. There's those that do health. There's those that do a registration with the department. So, so to partner up with other NGOs is firstly what I would suggest, to actually strengthen what you are doing. And then to find the right partners, it's very important to set clear goals. You have to know what you want to achieve. And when you actually choose your partner, it's important to match values and to partner with those who share the same mission and values. Find partners with a good track record. Do your research beforehand. Networking is really important. To try and attend as many events as possible where you can actually network with similar partners that have the same end goal as you. And when you partner up, check what everybody is bringing to the table. Some are bringing resources and skills, other is, financial. So get together and see what everybody is bringing to the table first. And then also check past partnerships. See how they worked before with other partners and with other companies before you actually team up with them. Check their reputation. Make sure that they have a good reputation before you partner up with them. And then when you sit down to create your roles and responsibilities, have definite roles agree on who's doing what, talk about the outcomes, speak about what success looks like, what you want your end goal to be. And very important, always put it down in writing. Formalize the partnership with some sort of an agreement so it's in writing, so everybody knows what their responsibilities are. Very important. It's important to be flexible. Because nothing goes according to plan, and especially when you are working with communities, and with us, when we're working with children, things always go wrong, things are different. So be flexible so that you can change as you need to be. Check your progress regularly, open communication, see how things are going, site visits, reports, feedback, open communication with not only each other within the partnership, but with everybody that you're working with. And always have a plan B, as I said. Plan for the end. If something doesn't work out, have a plan B so you know how you're going to be flexible and how you're going to change things moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to put out a poll for our audience with this question I'm about to ask now. And I'm hoping that also in the audience, they can answer this question verbally. And I'm just going to give a nudge to a few people to answer this question. So the question says, do you think there are resources and training opportunities available for nonprofits to build their capacity in forming and managing tri-sectoral partnerships? The audience can answer in the poll that I'm launching now. And Juanita, are you able to help us answer this one before I give it to my other speakers? You are on mute. Juanita?
Hi, thank you. Okay, are we
You were
waiting
on
for the
mute.
poll? Sorry. Are we waiting for the poll or am I just going ahead?
No, you go ahead. The poll is up.
So it's interesting. I'm watching the results, quite interesting. You know, it's a difficult question to answer unless you understand what is available and how to tap into those resources. So, for example, our partnership with Standard Bank has allowed us to tap into so many resources, and those are not just conferences and workshops, but inviting their partners to attend courses. We also have, you would have seen in the social media now that we've got the City Foundation grant, we have access to online resources, and a lot of it is out in the public domain. We just don't take the time and the effort to look into those resources. There's a lot of free courses. The universities offer a lot of free courses, and I think it's quite important as the nonprofit sector, and we're very driven about, passionate about the work we do, but how we manage relationships, how we manage our knowledge, we spend very little time on that. So I think that, yes, the answer to that, as much as it is limited, and I agree with the poll, it is limited, but it is out there. We just need to tap into it.
Okay. Quite interesting results that I'm seeing here. No one has said there's plenty of resources. Theresa and Kirston, do you guys feel the same to say there are also limited opportunities and trainings that are available?
I think it's limited, but as Juanita said, if you just go in search of it, you'll be amazed how much is available at either no cost or very little cost. There are always online webinars. The universities are always offering some sort of courses. There are worksheets available. So there is a lot available. I think you've just got to go in search of it.
Okay.
Maybe just to add to that, because I completely agree with both speakers, is maybe to actually take a few steps back and be intentional about what you require before you go out and look for it. So I agree that there's lots of free information available. Free doesn't always mean good, but if you've got your networks in place, I think referrals from other people who've been through it, very, very helpful. And I think that there is information available, but maybe to have, and I know this takes time, but to actually have a plan in place to say, you know what, actually, our fundraising is not great, or we need more information on finance, or logistics, or government relations, or how to advocate, etc. And to then be intentional about it and say, this year we're going to focus on the following 3, and just make sure you reach it in that way. Because I do think finding the time, which is a valuable resource in itself, probably the most valuable resource, is very, very difficult. And unless we actually specifically carve it out, we're going to struggle.
Okay. Now that I think we've kind of built the baseline for what these partnerships require and what they are, Kirston, can you guide us in terms of how then do they scale themselves as non-profit organizations to reach a broader audience and to ensure that there is long-term sustainability?
And it's almost a double-edged sword, right? Because if you are successful, and especially if you're showing impact early on, the demand that is then placed on you in a very short space of time is astronomical. So to be able to very clearly and logically map out what the scale looks like it's absolutely essential. So things such as, for example, if you are having a particular successful ECD program running, and all of a sudden everybody approaches you to roll out that ECD program, and you don't have the resources, the time, or the partnerships available, it's not going to happen. So have you done your homework beforehand in terms of, do you know who your other stakeholders are who are doing similar programs? To Theresa's point about forming those networks. Do you understand what common vision and goal you're all working towards? And actually, have you mapped it out on one piece of paper? So I know it sounds a little bit funny, but as a competitor analysis, it's not a competitor analysis, it's a stakeholder analysis. One piece of paper, have a look in your areas, maybe divided by geographies, and have a look who's doing work that is similar to you in the same area, who are doing things, and actually spend some time. Everybody can maybe divide up and everyone brings 5 of those people to the table, and you put it on one page and you know who those people are. Those are then those people that you're going to target for networking. Those are the same people you're going to ask for resources and cross collaboration in terms of donors and funding and those types of relationships, so that they become your community and you're forming a community of practice. So yes, you are competing for resources and donations. That is absolutely always going to be the case. But at the same time, what I'm starting to see more and more of is that private sector's donors are starting to have, as part of the sustainability requirements of any type of donation, is evidence of the partnerships that you form. So, and they're placing it on the NGO shoulders to say, it's you and who, and in 5 years who, and which government department, which we know in the next election, a lot of people are going to change over. So how have you institutionalized those relationships, and how can we help you institutionalize those relationships? So looking for those types of things in terms of actually getting them right at the beginning of projects. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be right at the start. If you already have a program in place that's working nicely, and I see in the questions and answers, there's some really nice examples coming through. Take a step back and say, of the people who I always thought were my competitors, who could I actually work alongside? Who's actually somebody who would be able to take the value chain and provide something else to this whole program? Who would be somebody that, as an organization, that would probably carry on in 3 years' time when we exit a particular community? And if you've got that down in proposals for donors, they see that it's automatically a sustainable program. And it's a huge element to have in place.
Okay, thank you so much, Kirston. Struan, do we have more questions before we move on?
Thanks, Millicent. Yeah, we do. We have a story from Jackson Chabalala from Lever Foundation, and he's telling us about how they have a flagship project that introduces coding to learners without the use of computers or the internet. And they've managed to reach 100,000 learners and trained 30,000 teachers. And he asked some questions, which I'll go ahead and answer. How can South African NPOs leverage social networks to garner funding from international sponsors? So if we think of the time that we're living in, with the amount of information that is generated daily, we have to be aware of telling our story consistently and putting it out there, because that's one way that NPOs can be noticed, if they are communicating their stories and packaging their results and sharing it on in the media, on platforms, etc. Are there online platforms that you'd suggest? Well, definitely LinkedIn is a good idea. You don't have to have the premium membership to benefit from the kind of content that's shared there, and it's stimulating to your creativity. There's ideas out there that people are sharing. There's also opportunities on LinkedIn that people are sharing. It's a professional platform. It's definitely worth it for NPOs. And what kind of digital tools are available for free? There's plenty of digital tools. Don't be stuck to one if it doesn't work for you. Search on Google, find the tools, sign up, try it. If it doesn't work for you, abandon it, look for something else. When you find something that works for you, use it. But there's plenty that can help you improve if you're coming to mind map tools or make a list tools, or just simple tools that help you to produce graphics that are going to improve your communications and your storytelling. So thanks, Millicent.
Okay. Thank you. Since we spoke about sustainability, then I think comes the talk of being accountable and being transparent. So how do we go about measuring the impact and outputs when it comes to this type of partnerships? And I think Theresa will take that one for us first.
Yes, so as Kirston said earlier, the ESG scoring is very important here. To have clear metrics, clear reporting, and then to verify your scoring as well. So what we've got, and I speak about Afrika Tikkun Bambanani, and that is ECD. So what we've got an assessment center. We call it the Bamba Assessment Hub. So on there, we've got all 12,000 of our children on the assessment center. So what happens is the teachers will score them every term in their numeracy, literacy, fine motor, gross motor, all their outcomes, all the 8 outcomes. And then every term, we will then monitor the improvement of these children. And then at the same time, the teachers will also then have to do assessments, and then we will monitor the growth and development of the teachers as well. So that is how we have, we will then go to donors. They can then log in at any time, and then they can then see how these children are progressing, and how a donor, when they are, sponsored a whole community, how they can see where their funds are going. So how do we then make sure and verify this? So we always bring in external moderators, and then they will have an external moderation report. So always ensure accountability and transparency when you are measuring impact. To have clear metrics, define exactly what you are measuring. Regular data collection. So we will do it, ours is continuous assessment throughout the year, however we report termly. So so collect data consistently, to always have an open process. Share how your data is collected and by whom it is collected. Quality control is very important. Check and verify your data for accuracy. Involve stakeholders when you are now when you are collecting your data. Include the community to input your data collection. Include parents and include teachers and principals to always have clear reports. Create easy to understand reports. So in our case, when we are giving parents reports and principals and teachers reports, it's got to be easy to understand. Use language that they understand. However, when you are reporting to donors and corporates, there you need to use more of a corporate language so that you speak into their funding, so that they understand where their funding is going. Regular updates. Whoever is involved, keep them informed regularly. Don't leave them for months or weeks without knowing what is going on. People need to know what is happening, and then updating them regularly really keeps them in the picture. There's transparency, there's open communication, and they're happy to see where their funds or where their inputs has benefited your project. Always have an external review. Like I was saying, we get external moderators. So don't be scared to have anybody externally moderating your project or moderating whatever you are doing, because that is all constructive criticism. Not everybody's perfect. So when something is good, that's great. And when there is something that you need assistance with, then that is even better, because that's how you improve your program. So for example, we sent our curriculum to Education Alliance Finland, because they're the best in the world for an ECD. And we then asked them to review our curriculum. It took a couple of months. Yes, we were quite nervous, you know, to see what are they going to say that's wrong with our curriculum. And we were so excited, you know, to receive a really good result. However, there were things that they asked us to improve on, which we have done. So having international certification of our curriculum, it just helps now when we go to donors, we can say it has been externally reviewed and externally moderated. Funding transparency, always be clear about where your money is coming from and what you are doing with your money, how much you need, how much you are bringing to the project, and how much you still need. And then use your data to improve what you are doing. So look at the data to see where are the gaps. So we use the data to find out where are our gaps in our curriculum. Where are the gaps in the teachers, what they are not doing correctly in the classroom. So when we do our monthly upskill training, it speaks to the gaps that we have found when we've collected the data, when the teachers have done the various assessments that we've given them throughout the year. Always have an M&E team, a team that oversees everything. They are the central role in the process, monitoring, scoring, collecting data, analyzing the data. And then allow your stakeholders to also provide input. Public data is also really important, where you compare your children's performance or the performance of your workers or the performance of your product against everything else. We always compare our stats against the Thrive by 5 stats. So that's the government results that they put out. So we compare our stats to the national average, and we always make sure that we improve on that average. So we will then take children with that low average and then improve on that as well. And then very important, your impact evaluation. Access the long-term effects of your impact. And by following these steps, you ensure transparency and trust in your impact measuring efforts.
Okay, thank you. Kirston, what is your take on?
Well, I think Theresa's been exceptionally comprehensive, and I think what you should do is package that and then have that as your M&E cheat sheet. I think that's perfect. Some of the things to consider when you're going through reporting transparently and M&E is that at the end of the day, M&E comes down to one thing, and that's prove it. So if you are, no matter what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, think about how I could prove that I've done it and that I've got this impact and these outcomes. So prove it. So M&E, like especially M&E practitioners, of which I'm one, so I'll put up my hand for that one. They will always bombard you with jargon, right? Because that's what we like to do. But at the end of the day, all it is proof. Just prove it. Give me the evidence. Show me it's done. And if you can sit there and say, show me the evidence and it's there, not a problem. Something that we are also looking at, or that we've considered before, is that especially organizations who are starting out or who are operating on very tight resources, share your M&E teams or share your M&E capabilities across other NGOs, because actually just getting a tool in place could be something that could be done where you're actually sharing that resource and bring it in. Also, to let you know that in terms of M&E, there are some excellent free resources on the internet with tools that you can use their templates, and you can cut and paste those. So that's something else that you could do. But then maybe my last point, just as a tip, is when you are considering the impact or the outcomes of your project, also have a look and see who else is looking at that impact, right? So we started at the beginning as a tripartite kind of collaborative collective here. Who else is looking at those metrics? So Thrive for Five, for example, or what are the government priorities, etc. So what are the kinds of metrics that other people are collecting so that you're able to contribute to those as well as compare yourself to those? Maybe government already has programs in place that have metrics that everybody else is using. Don't repeat and create your own. Just use the ones that already exist and work towards those ones, right? So don't overcomplicate this. And especially if you are linking into government metrics or government outcomes that they are dealing with, then that's another way that you can partner with government to be able to ensure that programs get done. So it's a full circle of you embedding yourself into the system. And it's one way that you can actually make use of some resources that exist there. But I think that, I think if on the M&E section, I think if we have to go away from one thing, just from a donor perspective, the thing is prove it. Just prove it. You told me you've reached 30,000 people, prove it. You've told me you've reached them with this and this, prove it. You told me you reached 2 people with the most amazing Microsoft skills, prove it. Absolutely brilliant. Just absolutely prove that it's there in some way, shape, or form. That way I can validate it. Oh, also on that point, I know somebody mentioned in the questions about work that the Afrika Tikkun did with the Microsoft Foundation. Also to let NGOs, I'm sure you do also know about Microsoft Foundation and their access to all of their software platforms for free as well.
Okay, I think Kirston has said it all. The proof is in the pudding. We have so many questions. We're only gonna have time to answer 3, and then we're gonna do our closing remarks. We can continue this conversation on LinkedIn. Please tag Seriti when you do continue this conversation. So right now I'm gonna give it to Struan. Answer 3 questions. We do closing remarks, and we're set to go. Struan, over to you.
Thanks, Millicent. So we have another question from Tebogo. She recalls Afrika Tikkun's teaming up with Microsoft on a digital skills program. And the question's for Theresa. How do we deal with the challenge of NPOs getting multi-year partnerships? Because a lot of corporate donors only want to do year to year. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask all the questions, and then we can have the responses from the speakers.
Okay.
We have another story from Ketiel, and he tells us about training ITC skills and how they're giving educational support in Makanda, Eastern Cape. And their projects are about robotics and coding, and they are training primary school kids in a computer lab, which they have free Wi-Fi, and it happens weekly after school. And he just asks, what kind of opportunities might there be for partnership in this area? And finally, Jackson asks, what are the critical departments or capacities that an NPO needs to have? Looking at the fact that there's limited resources within NPOs, what do they need to make sure they spend their money on? Thanks.
So I'm going to answer the first one about the year-to-year funding. So what I suggest there is don't wait the whole year to then go at the end of the year back to the funder and say, please, can I have funding for next year? So what we do is we constantly keep them updated on the project. So we will send reports, always add pictures because they love pictures, and don't keep the report long and 5, 6, 7 pages. That's also not important. They just basically need to see pictures, success stories. What they love to see, what I noticed is if you just, for example, give a comment, just a comment from whoever's involved in the project, whether it be a parent, whether it be the person learning from Microsoft, whether it be a teacher, principal, no matter who it may be, just give some sort of statement from them and some success stories, and just 2 pages, a report, a basic report on how the project is running. And you don't have to do that every week or every month, but at least do it 4 or 5 times during the year. then when you go back to them at the end of the year to say, please, can you continue the project next year? You've already kept them in the loop. There's open communication. You've given them stats, you've given them data, you've given them pictures. And generally, if the project is a success, they're quite happy to continue over for the following years. Because you've shown them impact. And then they can also then go back to their board and say, this is where our funding has gone. This is how it's helped. And please, can we continue next year? And I don't know how Kirston feels or her opinion on that. But I do know that Standard Bank also continues year on, continues for a couple of years with the project, provided that there is transparency and you do keep them updated.
Okay. We are nearing the end of our discussion. So to close it off, what are the emerging opportunities and trends that you foresee with this tri-sectoral partnerships, and how can nonprofits position themselves to take advantage of them?
Okay, so there is digital transformation. When you increase digitization, you then get new opportunities for collaboration. And nonprofits can leverage technology for data sharing, project monitoring, and remote engagement with partners and stakeholders. Economic recovery initiatives, climate action, the global focus on climate change presents opportunities for partnerships with environmental organizations. There's social impact investing, inclusive stakeholder engagement, corporate social responsibilities, where businesses are increasingly recognizing their social responsibility, and nonprofits can tap into that. How can nonprofits position themselves? Strategic alignments. Align your nonprofit mission and goals with emerging trends and opportunities. Be adaptable and open to shifting focus where necessary. Technology adoption. Embrace technology. Embrace technology for efficient communication, data management, and project monitoring. Ensure that your organization has the digital capabilities needed for modern partnerships. So move with the times, build networks, impact measurement, develop robust impact measurement and reporting systems so that you can demonstrate the value of your partnership. Advocate for policies that encourage tri-sectoral partnerships. Transparency and accountability. Always maintain high levels of transparency and accountability within your operation. Innovation. Encourage innovative thinking within your organization. Capacity building. Always strengthen your team's capacity in project management, partnership development, and data analysis. A skilled team is a valuable asset. And be strategically aligned with emerging opportunities. Embrace technology and maintain transparency. Nonprofits can position themselves to thrive in the evolving landscape of tri-sectoral partnerships. And to end, I'd like to say, in this ever-changing landscape of collaboration, tri-sectoral partnerships hold immense potential for nonprofits. By staying adaptable, leveraging technology, and fostering transparency, us as nonprofits can seize emerging opportunities, building robust alliances that drive positive change and empower communities. Together, we can bridge the gaps, create lasting impact, and collectively address the world's most pressing challenges, forging a brighter future for all of us.
Thank you. Kirston, you can wrap it up for us.
I was just going to say ditto. I think to wrap it up in a very, very short space of time, is that one of the things that we can't forget is that the NGO sector is absolutely essential for the functioning of this country. So along with a very strong government, a private sector that is well regulated and strong, a media that is free and able to report, the NGO sector is the fourth leg of the table, right? And so one of the points that I want to pick up on from what Theresa said is to actually lobby government for support of NGOs and to actually be strong and very, very vociferous advocates for the NGO sector. And maybe this is actually something that we need to take further, because there's also certain, and maybe not only lobby government, but maybe lobby the private sector. Because the private sector is not just about what NGOs can deliver, but also about sustaining NGOs. So I think that there's something in terms of the next steps of NGOs is to actually find ways and creative and innovative ways that the NGO sector is self-supporting and able to draw on these resources. And I think there's something in that.
Okay, thank you. I think we all now have like a brief understanding of what tri-sectoral partnerships are. And I hope that we use this information and tools to expand our horizon, grow our programs, diversify, and to bring solutions to our local communities. Thank you so much to our speakers for bringing so much insight and resources to help us move forward. Thank you to everyone for joining and being part of the conversation. Audience was amazing. The engagement was amazing. Let's keep the conversation going for the day on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Millicent. Thank you, Sariti.
Thank you, Theresa and Kirston. That was fabulous.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was amazing.
Thanks for having us on.
Bye.
Thank you both. Bye.